Mark and Emily Turner looked like the perfect couple, successful, admired, and completely in love. But behind their polished smiles and quiet suburban home, something sinister was taking shape. When Emily vanished without a trace, the illusion of perfection shattered overnight. What investigators uncovered next would expose a darkness no one in Willow Creek ever saw coming. To the people of Willow Creek, Mark and Emily Turner seemed to have everything anyone could want. Their two-story house sat neatly at the corner of Maple Street, with a white fence, trimmed hedges, and bright yellow flowers lining the walkway. Every morning, Mark left for work in his crisp blue shirt, waving to neighbors as he backed out of the driveway. And every evening, Emily could be seen tending her garden with quiet focus. Together, they appeared like something out of a magazine, kind, stable, and deeply in love. They were the kind of couple that made others believe in happy endings. On weekends, they hosted small gatherings, inviting neighbors for dinner or a backyard barbecue. Emily would bake a famous apple pie while Mark grilled steaks and told stories about his latest architectural projects. Everyone loved them, even when people gossiped about other families on Maple Street. The Turners were always left out of those conversations. There was nothing to gossip about. They were the steady ones, the reliable ones. And yet, behind closed doors, there were moments that didn't quite fit the picture. Sometimes, late at night, faint noises drifted through the thin suburban walls. Neighbors who were up reading or watching TV could swear they heard sharp sounds from the Turner house, something like a thud, followed by silence. Once, Mrs. Kearns from next door mentioned hearing glass shatter just after midnight, but when she saw Emily the next morning and asked about it, Emily just smiled and said she had dropped a jar of paint water. It was a harmless answer, and her calm tone made it easy to believe. No one wanted to think badly of her. She was too gentle, too kind, too normal. There were small signs, if anyone had looked closely. Emily had started wearing long sleeves, even on warm days, claiming she was cold. She stopped bringing her art supplies to school and seemed distracted during class. Her coworkers noticed she was losing weight, her usual cheerful voice growing softer, her smiles shorter. Still, she insisted everything was fine. When her best friend suggested she take some time off, Emily brushed it off, saying she was just tired from work. The truth stayed buried, hidden behind practiced words and polite smiles. Mark, on the other hand, was admired by almost everyone. He was polite, generous, and always ready to help with home repairs or community projects. He spoke gently and rarely raised his voice. When people described him, they used words like dependable, intelligent, and calm. He was the man every mother wanted her daughter to marry. Yet, there was a certain precision in everything he did: his schedule, his routines, even his tone of voice. Some found it admirable, others found it unsettling, though they couldn't explain why. One autumn evening, the couple attended a neighborhood gathering. They smiled, laughed, and posed for pictures. No one noticed how tightly Mark's hand rested on Emily's back, or how her laughter seemed a little forced. Later that night, the lights in their house stayed on long after everyone else had gone to sleep. The next morning, Emily's car was still parked in the driveway. The curtains were drawn, and the garden hose was left coiled on the lawn, dripping water onto the grass. Her neighbors assumed she had slept in, but when the afternoon came and she hadn't shown up for her art class, people started calling. Her phone went unanswered. By evening, the school principal reached out to Mark, who calmly told him that Emily had decided to visit her sister for a few days. It was a simple explanation, but something about his tone felt rehearsed. That night, rain began to fall over Willow Creek, washing away the footprints in the garden and the faint traces of what might have happened inside the Turner home. The lights in their kitchen burned through the night, casting long shadows across the empty living room. By the next morning, rumors had already begun to spread, and the story of the perfect couple started to crack. What no one knew then was that this was just the beginning of a nightmare none of them could have imagined. When Emily Turner's absence stretched beyond a single day, people began to whisper. At first, it was quiet. Concern the kind that spreads through a small town like a low hum. Her co-workers assumed she'd taken a sudden trip, maybe a spontaneous vacation. But when Monday came and her classroom remained empty, her students waiting by the door with blank canvases and puzzled faces, worry began to grow. The school called her home, but no one answered. Eventually, the police were notified, and the disappearance of Emily Turner became official. Mark greeted the officers with his usual calm demeanor. He stood on the front porch, arms crossed, as though slightly inconvenienced but not alarmed. He explained that Emily had left a few days earlier to visit her sister in another town. When asked for the sister's address, he said he didn't have it written down. His tone was steady, his eyes dry. The officers took note of the missing car keys, phone, and purse still sitting on the kitchen counter. None of it made sense. A person planning to leave would have taken at least one of those things with them. The search began that afternoon. Police dogs traced Emily's scent through the house, into the backyard, and then abruptly lost it near the woods behind their property. Officers combed the area, searching for signs of a struggle. But the rain that had fallen the night before had erased much of what could have been found. Mark cooperated fully, answering every question, providing access to the home, and even joining one of the search parties. To the outside world, he looked like a man desperate for his wife's return, but small inconsistencies started to appear. A neighbor's security camera showed Mark's car leaving the driveway late at night, 2 days before he claimed Emily had gone missing. The footage was grainy, but the shape of the vehicle matched his. He told police he had gone for a drive to clear his mind after an argument. When asked about the large duffel bag seen in the footage, he said it contained old blueprints from work that he had decided to throw away. The explanation sounded neat, maybe too neat, but with no evidence of foul play, the police couldn't push further. Days turned into weeks, and the missing posters bearing Emily's bright smile began to fade in the sun. Candlelight vigils were held in the park, where her friends spoke about her kindness, her patience, her love for art. Mark stood among them, silent, his expression unreadable. The community felt divided. Some still pitied him, while others whispered behind his back. People noticed that he didn't seem to cry or break down like most grieving spouses. He remained composed, always ready with an answer, always careful in what he said. Then came the discovery of something odd. One of Emily's students told the police about a painting she had finished shortly before she vanished. It had been strange, unsettling, an abstract image of a woman trapped behind bars, her eyes wide with terror. The title scrawled at the bottom was The Hidden Room. The principal, recalling the detail, gave the painting to investigators. It was dark, streaked with shades of gray and red. Unlike anything Emily had created before, the police began to wonder if it meant something more than just art. Investigators decided to re-examine the Turner house. Nothing stood out at first. Glance every surface spotless, every tool in its proper place. Mark was meticulous, almost obsessively so. But one detective noticed something peculiar in the garage. A patch of freshly painted wall, slightly off-color compared to the rest. When questioned about it, Mark explained that he had recently repaired a water leak. The detective nodded but made a quiet note to return later with a search warrant. The search expanded beyond the house. Police checked phone records, credit card activity, and surveillance cameras from nearby stores. There was no trace of Emily anywhere. Her last known movement was 2 days before Mark claimed she had left. No bus tickets, no hotel check-ins, no calls to family. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. As days passed, public sympathy for Mark began to fade. Reporters stood outside his home, cameras flashing as he walked to his car, maintaining the same expressionless calm. People began to question whether they had ever truly known him. The man who had once seemed steady now appeared hollow, like someone performing grief rather than feeling it. And though the police had no proof yet, something about the case felt wrong, too clean, too carefully arranged, as if every trace of truth had been wiped away before anyone even started looking. Detectives returned to the Turner residence early one morning with a search warrant in hand. The once charming home on Maple Street no longer looked warm or inviting. Its windows were shuttered, the paint was beginning to peel, and the garden Emily had cared for so lovingly was now overgrown with weeds. To outsiders, it was just another quiet, suburban house. To the police, it was a puzzle that refused to be solved. They combed through every room, documenting each space with photographs and careful notes. Everything appeared almost too orderly. Drawers were neat, closets arranged by color, and there wasn't a single speck of dust on any surface. Mark's perfectionism was unsettling. It gave the impression of a man desperate to control every detail around him. In the garage, one officer noticed something peculiar. A heavy tool cabinet was positioned oddly, slightly away from the wall. When they moved it aside, a faint outline caught their eye, something that didn't belong. A small rectangular patch, slightly uneven, stood out against the smooth concrete wall. The detective tapped it, and the hollow sound confirmed what they suspected. Behind the wall was a hidden space. With Mark's permission already secured by the warrant, they forced it open. The door swung inward with a sharp creak, releasing a stale, metallic smell that made everyone freeze. Inside, there was a small room, no windows, no ventilation, just cold concrete and dim light from a single bulb hanging by a wire. A thin mattress lay in one corner, stained and sunken, with a blanket folded neatly on top. On a small table sat an empty water bottle and a cracked mirror. The air was heavy, suffocating. On the walls, faint scratch marks ran along the surface, like someone had tried to claw their way out. One of the officers stepped back, his face pale. Whatever this room was, it was not meant for storage. Samples were collected from the floor, walls, and furniture. The investigators worked in silence, each realizing that the image of the perfect Turner marriage had finally shattered. Within days, the lab results came. Back traces of Emily's blood were found beneath the floor tiles. It wasn't much, but it was enough to confirm what many had begun to fear. Emily hadn't left voluntarily. Something terrible had happened inside that house. Mark was brought in for questioning. Sitting under the harsh light of the interrogation room, he appeared calm, composed, and eerily detached. He explained that the small room in the garage was an old storm shelter from before they bought the house. As for the blood, he claimed it must have been from an injury Emily sustained years ago while helping him move furniture. His answers were rehearsed, precise, and delivered without hesitation. Yet, despite his explanations, the detectives sensed cracks forming in his story. When Emily's phone records were examined again, investigators discovered that she had backed up her data a week before disappearing. Hidden within the backup were deleted text messages between her and a close friend. In those messages, Emily had confessed that she was afraid. She wrote that Mark had become controlling, that he monitored her phone, her spending, and even her art. She mentioned the room in the garage, saying she wasn't allowed inside it anymore, that it made her feel uneasy. Her final message read, "I think he's hiding something. I'll find out soon." The police confronted Mark with the messages, but he simply shook his head, insisting they were taken out of context. He denied every accusation, calling it all a misunderstanding. Without a body or direct evidence of foul play, the case remained frustratingly incomplete. Still, the discovery of the hidden room changed everything. The town of Willow Creek was shaken to its core. News crews lined the street outside the Turner home. Neighbors whispered among themselves, replaying every memory, every detail they might have missed. The couple who once symbolized happiness had become the center of a chilling mystery. Late at night, as the flashing lights from police cars reflected on the wet pavement, many couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the house might still be hiding. The search for Emily Turner was no longer a simple missing person, 'cause it had become a race to uncover the truth. Buried beneath the lies of a man who seemed incapable of emotion, and the home that had turned into a silent witness to something unthinkable. As investigators continued digging through Mark Turner's life, the image of the perfect husband began to fall apart. His colleagues at the architecture firm described him as intelligent, but distant, a man who avoided small talk and worked long hours, even when he didn't need to. He was known for his precision, his obsession with control, and his refusal to share credit on projects. When detectives reviewed his work computer, they found encrypted folders hidden among design files. With the help of digital forensics, those folders were unlocked, revealing something far darker than blueprints, dozens of photographs of women. Some were clearly candid shots taken from a distance. Others appeared to be personal, intimate, and invasive. None of them were Emily. The discovery led investigators to dig deeper into his past. They found that Mark had rented several storage units across neighboring towns under different names. Search teams moved quickly, unlocking each one. Inside the first unit, they found boxers filled with seemingly random objects: women's jewelry, scarves, shoes, and notebooks filled with detailed notes. Each notebook page was dated and contained descriptions of women's appearances, places, and habits, as though he had been keeping track of them. In another unit, they found camera equipment, maps, and newspaper clippings about missing women from nearby counties. The oldest entry dated back nearly 10 years. The evidence painted a disturbing picture. Mark wasn't just an overbearing husband. He had been living a double life. The small town that once viewed him as reliable now saw him as a predator who had used his calm, intelligent exterior to hide a darkness no one had suspected. Detectives began to connect him to several cold cases involving missing women who fit a similar profile: young, quiet, and artistic. For years, the cases had remained unsolved. Now, with each discovery, the puzzle began to fit together. While investigators pieced together Mark's secret life, search teams continued to look for Emily's body. Weeks had turned into months, and her disappearance had become a haunting story whispered in coffee shops and local news programs. Then, one cold morning, a hiker walking along a remote trail nearly 50 miles from Willow Creek stumbled upon something strange. A patch of disturbed earth lay at the base of a fallen tree. The hiker noticed a scrap of fabric poking through the soil and immediately called the authorities. The area was sealed off within hours. Under layers of dirt and leaves, police found a shallow grave. Inside was the body of a woman wrapped in plastic, her features barely recognizable, but her wedding ring still glinting faintly in the light. Dental records confirmed what everyone feared: it was Emily Turner. Near the grave, detectives found a single work glove with Mark's initials stitched on the inside. The discovery left no room for denial. The man who had appeared so calm, so helpful, had killed his wife and buried her like she was nothing. When officers arrived at Mark's house to arrest him, he didn't resist. He simply asked if they had found her and nodded when they said yes. There was no shock, no anger, no emotion at all. His expression was the same one he wore at every neighborhood, gathering, quiet and unreadable. As he was led to the police car in handcuffs, neighbors stood on their lawns, staring in disbelief. Some wept, others couldn't look at him. The perfect husband, the one who had fixed their fences and smiled at their children, was being taken away as a murderer. At the police station, the media swarmed outside, shouting questions that Mark ignored. Inside, the evidence was overwhelming. Photos, notebooks, and the hidden room in his garage told a story of control and cruelty that spanned years. Detectives believed Emily had discovered something she was never meant to see. Perhaps she had opened the wrong folder on his computer or found the key to his storage unit. Whatever it was, it had cost her life. The case that began as a missing person search had transformed into one of the darkest murder investigations Willow Creek had ever seen, revealing that even the most ordinary homes can hide unimaginable horror behind their walls. Mark Turner's trial drew national attention. Reporters filled the courtroom every day. Sketch artists lined the front benches, and cameras waited outside the courthouse gates from sunrise to sunset. People wanted to understand how a man who appeared so gentle and normal could have committed something so monstrous. Prosecutors built their case carefully, piece by piece, reconstructing the life that had seemed perfect from the outside but had been collapsing in secret for years. They presented the jury with the evidence found in his garage, the storage units, and the hidden files from his computer. Every photograph, every note, every object spoke of control and obsession. The jury listened as experts testified that Mark showed traits of manipulation and emotional detachment. He wasn't impulsive. He was meticulous, the kind of man who planned everything down to the smallest detail. Emily's murder, they argued, was not a crime of passion, but a calculated act meant to preserve his control when he realized he was losing it. Her discovery that he had been stalking other women had made her a threat. He silenced her the same way he had erased evidence of other lives before. When the prosecutors displayed Emily's final painting, the hidden room, the courtroom went silent. The image of a woman trapped in the shadows felt like a message she had left behind, a reflection of her fear and her knowledge of what was coming. The painting became symbolic, a haunting echo of the secret she had uncovered. The jury members stared at it for a long time, and for many, it was the moment the case turned. The defense tried to argue that Mark had been under stress, that his actions were misunderstood, and that the items in the storage units were part of an art project he had once planned with Emily. But their explanations sounded hollow against the weight of the evidence. Forensic experts linked soil samples from his car tires to the area where Emily's body had been found. DNA tests confirmed traces of her blood in the hidden room, despite his claims of an old injury. Even the precise knots used to wrap her body matched the patterns he used on his architectural models. As the days passed, Mark's demeanor never changed. He sat quietly, sometimes taking notes, sometimes staring straight ahead as though he were watching someone else's story unfold. He never cried, never pleaded for forgiveness. When given a chance to speak, he said only that he loved his wife and never meant for things to go wrong. The words felt empty, mechanical, as if rehearsed 100 times. After weeks of testimony and cross-examination, the jury took less than 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, unlawful confinement, and evidence tampering. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, a faint murmur filled the courtroom, followed by silence. Mark showed no reaction. His expression remained blank, detached, as officers led him away. In the months that followed, the Turner home was sold but never occupied. The new owners backed out after visiting once, saying the air inside felt heavy and wrong. The neighbors no longer spoke of the Turners, though the memory of what had happened lingered in every glance toward the empty house. The once bright garden was now overrun with weeds, the flowers Emily had planted long dead. Some nights, the porch light flickered on by itself, and people swore they could see shadows moving behind the windows. Emily's story didn't fade. However, her final painting, The Hidden Room, was donated to a local museum where it hangs today, behind protective glass. Visitors often stop and stare at it, drawn by its chilling intensity. Beneath it, a small plaque bears her name and the words, "In memory of those who suffer in silence." The painting has become both a warning and a legacy, a reminder that evil can live quietly behind a smile, and that danger often hides in the most ordinary places. For the town of Willow Creek, the story of Mark and Emily Turner became a ghost they could never quite escape. Every year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, people leave flowers near the path that leads into the woods where she was found. And though time continues to move on, the memory of that perfect marriage and the unthinkable truth it concealed remains a chilling testament to how little we truly know about the people who live right next door.